Let's nerd out about complementary colors. We're going to be using purple and yellow. The colors that I'm using are Cotman brand by Winsor and Newton. The purple is Dioxazine purple, sorry about that, and Cadmium yellow hue. I like cadmium as opposed to the lemon yellow because it's just a tiny bit oranger or warmer and not quite as vibrant and bright. So I like a little bit more toned down. However, we're actually going to get very toned down in our painting today because we're going to learn how to mix these and make neutrals. I am a total nerd about watercolor, well, about color theory, and especially in watercolor, it's really fun to explore color theory. So we're going to make a quick little easy painting using only two colors, and we're going to mix them to create this atmospheric perspective by neutralizing the colors when they mix together. If you've seen a color wheel before, you might be able to imagine how purple and yellow are on the opposite sides of the color wheel. So when they mix together, they make a neutral. So here I'm starting with yellow, plain yellow straight out of the tube, and I'm creating a wash for the sky, but I'm making it get lighter as it goes down the paper. I want the brightest yellow at the top, but we're going to be layering some mountains as we go, so I don't want it to stay super bright and dark. We're going to kind of fade it away, and we'll do this each time we add a layer to our mountains. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our yellow and a tiny bit of purple. Now I'm not cleaning my brush because purple's a pretty strong color, so it can handle getting a tiny bit of yellow in it. If that stresses you out, just wash your brush between mixing the colors together. So I have mostly yellow in this mix with a little bit of purple. Now I tried to dry my paper with a hairdryer. It didn't completely dry, but for this first layer of mountains, that's actually kind of a good thing that it's just barely damp because it's going to make the top edge of that mountain look a little bit fuzzy, which helps it look far away because it's kind of out of focus. But if you dry your paper all the way, just to make sure, that's totally fine too. Look how I'm fading down that color. So I'm creating that same wash or gradient effect where it's brightest or most saturated at the top, but then becomes lighter in value at the bottom. Now I'm taking about mostly yellow still, but almost half and half. So I want this to be as close to brown as possible with still a tiny bit of yellow tint. So it's more of a yellow brown. That is almost a disgusting brown, but it is what I want. So I'm gonna water that down a little bit so it's not super dark, and then I gotta make sure this first mountain is dry before I paint it on top. Now I can take that brush with the color that I mixed and I can make my next set of mountains. When I make these kind of mountain shapes, I try to keep them fairly random or different from each other. So they're not all going straight across, they're coming from different directions, not all the bumps are the same size. I'm trying to use the tip of my round brush to make sure that it looks more hard-edged and not exactly round. I am using a size 8 brush, the round with a mainly pretty pointy tip so I can get those pointy edges to the mountains. Honestly, a flat brush would work pretty well too. Now I want a lot of yellow, but this time I want a little bit more purple than yellow. Now because my yellow is more weak of a color, when I go back and forth to get more yellow, I am going to have to wash my brush before dipping in it. However, I think I get to avoid that because this turned out to be a pretty good brown. Look how it's almost more of a red brown because purple has some red in it. And so that means I'm getting closer to the purple than I am to the yellow. Again, I'm adding a little bit of water to it and make sure it's not super opaque. And then I have to make sure that past mountain is dry. Now that it is dry, I'm going to take that more purpley red and make my next mountain scene. Once again, kind of keeping it random. My previous mountain was higher on the left, so this time I'm making it higher on the right, just trying to keep a variety in the shapes, gradually fading the mountain down, making sure to add a little bit of water so I can create that transparency that watercolor does really well and fade it down to the bottom of the space that it's in. I need to keep in mind that I have 2 more colors to add, so I don't want it to get completely full yet. This time it's going to be mostly purple, and I am going to wash my brush before I dip in that yellow to make sure I don't use or change all the yellow paint. And then I can add a little bit of yellow to my purple. I think I need a little bit more yellow. It's getting pretty close. So I'm going to wash my brush, dry it off a bit, grab a little bit more yellow, and mix that into my purple here. Notice how this purple is it's more neutralized than the real straight purple. You'll see that especially once I paint the just true purple on top, but the whole point of mixing those opposite colors is they neutralize. So you can see from the sky how bright and vibrant that yellow is compared to the first mountain is a much more neutral mountain. I love the magic that creates. This is a great way to make your paintings feel more realistic because if you look outside, the real world is not actually super vibrant. Even the bright greens on the trees are not a lime green or the same color as green straight out of the tube of paint. They're a little bit more brown. Learning to mix these neutral colors will help your paintings look a lot more realistic because you can control how vibrant your color is. All right, I'm mixing, making sure this last mountain is fades. This time I'm going to fade it all the way to the bottom to make sure that my next mountain on top has a same consistency of color. Okay, drying my last mountain and then time for the true purple. Finally, I'm just going to use straight purple to see the vibrancy change from how I neutralized it before. I want this purple to be fairly dark since it has to go on top of these other colors, so I want to make sure that it's a little bit more of a creamy consistency versus a coffee consistency so that it can really cover up what was there before it. There, you can see how much brighter that purple is. It's almost unnatural. If I was making this just to make this painting, I'd probably actually still tone down this purple. Because I've got so much dark at the bottom, I thought it'd be fun to add a few little birds with the tippy point of my brush in the sky. That helps kind of balance the darks in my painting. Once I smooth out this final mountain, then that is the final step of our nerding out about complementary colors. Yellow and purple are perfect for this because of the sky silhouette idea of mountains and atmospheric perspective, but try it with orange and blue. Those are also complementaries, as well as red and green. All of those colors, when mixed, create brown, but those browns can be fairly different. So do a lot of experimenting and get comfortable with color mixing. It's so much fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe. I share a lot of different tutorials and tips about how to learn and paint with watercolor for all ages and all abilities. So stay tuned for my next video and have fun painting.